I think that I thought I was dealing with it. And I genuinely thought that I had.
It sounded casual, even lighthearted. A glimpse into the balancing act that held their marriage together. But behind those calm words, something heavier was building. They were the couple everyone rooted for, charming, witty, and seemingly unbreakable. The kind of love story people believed in, not because it was perfect, but because it felt real. Yet now, whispers have turned into headlines. Friends have gone quiet, family members are speaking out, and moments once seen as affectionate are being rewatched through a different lens. What changed behind the scenes? Why now? And which private moment left even their closest friends stunned? New information has surfaced, pulling back the curtain on what really went on between Patrick Kielty and Kat Deeley. This isn't just another celebrity split. Something deeper cracked. And the clues, they've been there all along. Before they were one of Britain's most admired couples, Patrick Kielty and Kat Deeley were simply two rising TV personalities navigating the chaos of early 2000s live broadcasting. Their paths first crossed on Fame Academy, a talent show that captured the spirit of the era. As co-hosts, they had instant chemistry, easy laughter, gentle teasing, and the kind of natural warmth producers dream of. To audiences, they looked perfect together. But behind the scenes, what blossomed wasn't romance. It was friendship. They respected each other deeply. Two professionals driven by ambition yet grounded in humor and humility. For years, nothing romantic happened. They dated other people, worked on different continents, and built their own successes. Kat's career took her across the Atlantic, where she became a household name hosting So You Think You Can Dance. She was bright, graceful, and utterly at home in front of a live audience. Meanwhile, Patrick stayed rooted in the UK, sharpening his craft as one of the country's most beloved comedians. They remained close, checking in occasionally, celebrating each other's wins from afar. Theirs was a rare kind of friendship, steady, respectful, and immune to gossip. But destiny has its own timing. And in 2011, almost out of nowhere, everything shifted. It happened quietly. Not on set, not at an event, but in private. After nearly a decade of friendship, Patrick made a decision that would change everything. He booked a flight from London to Los Angeles. No cameras, no press, just a man following a feeling he couldn't shake. When he showed up at Kat's doorstep, the connection was instant. What had once been friendship now felt like something far more powerful. From that moment, their story moved quickly. Within months, they were inseparable, traveling together, laughing endlessly, and appearing side by side at public events with a glow that said everything. In 2012, without the glare of paparazzi, they pulled off a secret wedding in Rome. Just close friends, family, and two people who had waited nearly 10 years for the timing to finally be right. The ceremony was intimate and romantic. No headlines, no spectacle. They wanted their love to be theirs alone. It was, by all accounts, a dream come true. But fairy tales rarely stay untouched by reality. Because while that wedding marked a perfect beginning, the very thing that brought them success, ambition, would soon become the hardest test of their marriage. At first, their love story seemed unshakable. Together, they built a beautiful family and made Los Angeles their home. Kat thrived in Hollywood, confident, charismatic, and adored by audiences. Her success continued to grow as she became one of Britain's few presenters to truly conquer U.S. television. Patrick, however, faced a more complicated path. His comedy, witty, thoughtful, and deeply Irish, didn't quite translate across the Atlantic. While Kat was working on primetime television in L.A., Patrick was booking tours, hosting specials, and performing back in the UK. What began as a few flights across the ocean turned into a routine. Patrick commuting between continents, Kat juggling the demands of a live show and motherhood, both determined to make it work. They welcomed two sons, filling their lives with laughter and love. But as time went on, the cracks began to show. When one was home, the other was often away. Birthdays, school events, quiet evenings, moments that mattered, slipped away in the shuffle of airports and schedules. Kat once described their marriage as beautifully balanced, but balance requires both sides to stand still, and neither of them could. By the time Kat began considering a return to the UK for work, Patrick was deepening his ties to Ireland, taking on more projects closer to home. Instead of aligning, their paths began to drift further apart. They had built a family across two worlds, but geography and fame have a way of wearing down even the strongest bonds. And through it all, they remained publicly silent. But silence can speak volumes. For years, they managed the distance. The long flights, the missed calls, the exhaustion, it all became routine. Friends say they handled it with grace, refusing to let the media in, but even the calmest seas can hide deep currents. When Kat eventually moved back to Britain, many assumed the couple was reuniting permanently, that they were ready to rebuild life on the same soil. But insiders noticed something different. Appearances became rare. The warmth between them, once effortless, began to feel rehearsed. And then came the moment that caught everyone's attention. A family gathering that should have been joyful, but instead raised quiet concern. Observers described a distance between them that couldn't be ignored. Neither Patrick nor Kat spoke publicly about any issues. They never traded words in the press, never confirmed or denied speculation. But the silence itself, that careful, deliberate silence, said enough. Whatever had changed between them, it wasn't sudden. It had been building for years, hidden under laughter, flights, and smiles for the cameras. Maybe this isn't a story about heartbreak at all. Maybe it's about two people who tried, really tried, to hold together a life stretched between dreams and duty. Patrick Kielty and Kat Deeley were never defined by drama. Their love story wasn't loud. It was tender, patient, built on mutual respect. And maybe that's what made it so hard to see when things began to fade. The truth is, love doesn't always end with anger or scandal. Sometimes it just runs out of space. Sometimes two good people are pulled apart by the very lives they worked so hard to build. Today, both continue their careers, raising their children with grace and privacy. But for those who watched them from the beginning, the story still lingers. A reminder that even the strongest connections can quietly unravel. Because behind every perfect picture, there's a truth few ever see. And in this case, the signs, they were there all along. When stories like this reach the headlines, truth becomes tangled in interpretation. Whispers morph into narratives. Small details become evidence. Suddenly, a look caught on camera turns into a rumor. A separate work trip becomes a trial separation, and the world begins to write its own version of events. For Patrick and Kat, the glare of celebrity only intensified that distortion. They had always protected their privacy, but now every silence was treated as confirmation, every absence as a clue. What fans once saw as loyalty, their decision not to overshare, was recast as secrecy. The irony? Most of what was being said had little to do with reality. Friends close to the couple insisted there was no explosive argument, no betrayal, just the slow ache of two lives evolving in opposite directions. But modern fame has no patience for quiet truths. In a world where headlines shout louder than people speak, their restraint was misread. And while speculation raged online, Patrick and Kat chose dignity over drama, letting the noise pass rather than feeding it. Yet behind that calm, one question lingered. Could love survive in a world that refuses to let anything remain private? Time has a way of softening everything, the pain, the pressure, even the scrutiny. Years later, when people look back on Patrick Kielty and Kat Deeley, they rarely speak of rumors. Instead, they remember the laughter that lit up early television, the chemistry that made live TV feel effortless, and the rare connection that survived nearly a decade before romance ever began. They may have lived in different worlds, Hollywood lights for her, Belfast stages for him, but their story remains proof that love can exist across distance, even if only for a season. Their friendship, by all accounts, still endures, anchored by mutual respect and their shared devotion to their children. Perhaps that's the quiet triumph at the end of it all, that beyond fame, careers, and gossip, two people can still find peace with how their paths unfolded. In the end, their story isn't a tragedy, it's a testament, a reminder that even when a love story changes shape, it can still leave something beautiful behind. Because sometimes, the greatest success isn't staying together, it's parting with grace.